What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we've got something a little bit different going on besides just regular detailing stuff that I've been posting. So today we are actually going to be walnut blasting the intake valves on this 2018-2019 WRX Fa20DIT. So same motor that's going to be in any of the WRXs, Subaru WRXs from 2015 to 2021, and then I believe also the Forester XT with the Fa20DIT from 2014 and 15 as well. So the whole purpose of the walnut blasting process on the direct injected motors is because there's no fuel passing over the intake valves, and so they get very gummed up with carbon buildup. And what that's going to happen over time is it's going to basically start to harm your mileage on your motor. You might start to get some random random knock readings as well, and just efficiency overall is going to decrease on your vehicle. So recommended is to get this service done, I want to say every 30,000 miles, I believe is what it is, to have your valves cleaned. Now, of course, there are some things that you can do to prevent that and help that carbon buildup from happening, and that's going to be installing an air oil separator or a catch can setup, and then also deleting your EGR. Now, of course, I do know with EPA regulations these days, it is a little bit harder to be able to delete your EGR and find a tuner out there, but if you can, I would highly recommend doing that to help with that carbon buildup. So anyways, this is a service that I do offer. This is a service that I do out of my house. I do not offer it mobilely. I am at my buddy's house right now to do his, and this is just kind of a one-off thing. He's a very good friend of mine, and his wife and kids are watching my kid right now, and my wife is in there hanging out with him. So just kind of making a good solid day out of it. But we're gonna get down into doing his car today. He is on Instagram as Bagged Boy Blue. It was previously Spool and Fa20, and I will link his current Instagram down low in the description, so make sure you guys check him out. Very, very beautiful car, very beautiful build, and we are on a crew together called Diverse Society, which I will also link down low, so make sure you check out our team page. So anyways, this is his car right here behind me. We've got a front mount intercooler, so we don't have to worry about popping off the top mount, which is going to save us a little bit of time. We're going to have to pop off a hose from the top mount to the throttle body, but that's no big deal. He does still have his TGVs and his EGR, so we're going to be removing that. And then we're just going to take you guys through the whole process from start to finish. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we are going to actually pull the fuse for the fuel pump, and when we do that, we're going to go ahead and start the car, let it run for a little bit, and just let it die out. And the reason why we're going to do that is you want to get all the fuel out of the lines, because we're going to have to disconnect a few fuel lines from the intake manifold, and we don't want that pressure in there and spill fuel just everywhere over the motor. So we're going to start there. Once we do that, we're going to go ahead and jack the car up, and then we're going to drain a gallon, just a gallon, of coolant from the radiator, from the bung on the radiator. And that's so when we disconnect some of the coolant lines that are connected to the intake manifold and the throttle body, we're not going to lose a bunch of coolant either. And we'll literally, once we're done, put the coolant funnel on, pour the coolant that we pulled out of the car, pour it right back in, burp the system, and you won't have to add any more coolant to it. If we lose any, it's going to be literally like a couple drops, which is not a big deal. It's not going to do any harm. So take you guys through this whole process. Let's get started on those few things, and we'll go from there. Alright, so we got our fuse box right here. We're going to go ahead and carefully remove our lid to our fuse box. Right here in the fuse box lid, we're going to have our diagram of all of our fuses. So we'll look in here, and we'll look for our fuel pump, which is a 15 amp fuse. So it's going to be this guy right here is going to be our 15 amp fuse for our fuel pump. So you should have in here this little white tool, and that tool is in here to help you remove fuses. So we're going to go ahead and pop that there. Carefully wiggle that guy out, and we'll set that to the side. So once we got that fuel pump fuse popped, we're gonna go ahead and pop the gas tank lid cover. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and relieve the pressure from the fuel tank. So we're gonna just take the lid off when we start the car. So that way we can relieve all of the pressure from the fuel system and the tank and everything. If you've ever put gas in your car before, you know exactly how this works. And if you live in Oregon and you don't pump your own gas, I feel bad for you. All right, so now that we got all that done, let's go ahead and start this car. It might run for a little bit. When I did my car, it literally, like, I started it and it died out. But I have seen the My WRX channel video with Subiebros when they did it, and they had the car that they did ran for, I want to say, like 5 to 10 minutes. So it might just kind of be hit or miss depending on how long the car is sat, how much fuel's in the system. But anyways, it's a process that needs to be done. So however long the car runs for, we're just going to start it and we're going to let it kill itself. So let's go ahead and start this guy up. So he does have a Grimspeed catted J pipe on it with the NVIDIA R400, and this will be a cold start, so you guys can hear that as well, and it sounds pretty good. So just like that, it cut. But what we are going to do, just to make sure all the fuel is out of the system, is we're going to turn it over about 2 or 3 more times, just to make sure that it's not going to start back up or anything, and we get all that fuel out of the lines. So we went ahead and turned it over. She didn't start back up. We got all the fuel out of the lines. If you do have an access port on your car, which highly recommended, you can also pull up your fuel pressure on that, and it should drop down to 0. So that will help you know as well that you're also completely just cut on fuel. So fuel is all drained out of the lines. So to start the whole process, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove this part of the charge piping from the intercooler, and it's just 8mm hex nuts for the hose clamps. Alright, so we got the car jacked up. We got the under tray, the plastic under tray off the car, and the reason why we need to do that is so we can drain the coolant. So I did already go ahead and go under the car and pull the bung plug, which is this guy right here, off the bottom passenger side of the radiator. And then when you do that, keep the coolant lid still on so it kind of holds for that pressure there, so you don't lose a lot of coolant and starts draining whenever you pull the bung plug out. But then once you have it pulled out, you can go ahead and pop open the cap. It'll release the pressure, and then it'll go ahead and start draining out your coolant. And it takes a little bit of time, but all you need to drain out is a gallon. You don't need to drain out any more than that. So this bucket here has got all my measurements on it, so I know once it gets to a gallon, give or take. And yeah, once that's done, we can go ahead and start disconnecting some lines up top and some electrical connections to go ahead and get the intake manifold off. So we went ahead and got a gallon of coolant drained. We've got this charge pipe piece off right here. So now what we're going to do is start disconnecting things that we need to disconnect from the intake manifold. And to start, we're going to go ahead and start with the fuel lines. You've got 2 fuel lines here. You've got your inlet, and then you've got your return, I believe it is. And so we're going to go pop those off. And when you do this, you want to make sure that you put a rag underneath these to catch some of the residual fuel that will dribble out of here. And again, we depressurize the fuel system, so you shouldn't have to worry too much about that. All right, and then so when you disconnect the fuel lines, get your towel under there, and then you're just going to use a flathead screwdriver, small flathead, and just carefully get it underneath this blue quick disconnect right here. And then once you get that up high enough, that will pull right off. And then you will also have this connected with a little secure clip right there. So once you have this loose, you can grab some needle nose and go ahead and just pull that all off, just like that. And then we have very, very minor fuel spillage coming out of there. No big deal. And then we can go ahead and just pop this and set this out of our way. And man, right underneath it, you've got another one, and this one just has a simple clip on it. So we'll just, a pinch clip. So we'll pop that, kind of turn it to break it loose, the line, and then we will pull this guy right off as well. Pop it out of here where it's being held in. And also go ahead and move that one out of our way. So we got that, and then we're right here. So we're gonna go ahead and pop off TGV plugs and get those set to the side. So we got one on each side. And then with these plugs, they are, of course, probably a little brittle, so you just want to be really careful with them. Go ahead and pinch the tab to release it, and then just get a little flathead screwdriver to kind of pop underneath there to help wiggle it off a little bit. And then once we've got those off, we still have quite a few more lines on here that we need to remove. You just kind of start taking stuff off. So you got wiring harnesses, you've got sensors, so we'll pop off that map plug, which we will be pulling this map sensor out to clean as well. Since the intake manifold is off, we'll also be cleaning the throttle body since it's off also. We've got some coolant lines that we're gonna need to remove. So we got this guy. Got another one that's right here on the top. And again, a lot of these, if they've been in place for a very long time, you're just gonna kind of have to give them a nice twist, and then they should pop. And you might have to use pliers, but typically you can just go ahead and pop them just like that. Thank you. I got this guy here. Pop that guy off. And a lot of this, honestly, is muscle memory. Just from doing it, you'll remember where everything goes. And then also on top of that, a lot of these lines that you're removing are molded. So when you start putting the intake manifold back on and clipping things into place, where the lines go will pretty much start to just fall right into place where they belong, which is nice. But if you don't know where things are supposed to go, by all means, mark them. Mark them with some tape, mark them with some zip ties. There are a couple lines that you'll see here shortly that I will mark with a zip tie, just so I know if it's upper or lower. Other than that, just keep going at this and carefully removing lines that are connected to the intake manifold. There's two lines right underneath the intake manifold. These are going to be for your crankcase ventilation system. And these are the two that you might mix up when you're reinstalling it. So what I like to do is I like to take a colored zip tie and pop a colored zip tie on the top, just so I know that it is the top hose when I'm reinstalling everything. So now with this car, we do have an EGR on it, and the EGR does connect to the intake manifold. So we are going to go ahead and pop off the upper portion of the EGR, and that way we can start working on wiggling the intake manifold around once we unbolt the bolts on each side. Once we unbolt the bolts on each side of the intake manifold, there will be some additional hoses underneath that we're going to need to remove, but they're just a little bit easier to get to when we're underneath. Same thing with a few plugs and whatnot as well. So we're working on removing the EGR right now from the intake manifold, and I believe it's just this upper EGR pipe that you have to remove. I could be wrong, but that's why we are going to figure that out when we start removing the actual intake manifold. So 4 12mm bolts. We've got 2 on each side of this EGR pipe, and there is a gasket, a metal gasket on the other side of this that we need to retain and keep and not damage or lose. So go ahead and pop all this off. And if you're planning on deleting your EGR and you've got a tuner that will tune the codes out for you, this is a good time to do this. Just whether you're doing the walnut blasting yourself or talk to the person who's doing the walnut blasting for you and let them know that you also want to add the EGR delete in there, and I'm sure they'll give you a good price for doing that. So there we've got our EGR pipe out, and then the metal gasket here as well. So EGR pipe and the metal gasket, and make sure you go ahead and retain that, don't lose that, and set this guy somewhere safely as well. So once you get the EGR off, if you have that on, there's another line that connects to the another hose that connects to the intake manifold. We're going to go ahead and pop that guy off there as well. We'll set that to the side, get it out of our way. And then, like I said, there might be a couple other things that we might need to disconnect back here, but for this time being, what we're going to go ahead and do next is we are going to go ahead and start removing the bolts to the actual intake manifold. That way we can start kind of wiggling it up a little bit and see what else is connected, because there are a few electrical connections underneath the intake manifold, as well as a few more fuel lines over here and possibly a few more coolant hoses. Nothing hard to do, but starting to loosen the intake manifold and just getting the bolts out makes it a lot easier. You can kind of wiggle under there and get some more room to work on it. So we'll go ahead and start doing that. So to start removing the intake manifold, we've got 4 12mm bolts on each side. So go ahead and we'll start cracking all these loose. Crack my shoulder while I'm at it. And then once you've got all those bolts out, it definitely helps to have a magnet. Yeah, you can definitely grab them, it's not a big deal, but having a magnet to retrieve all these bolts just makes life that much easier so you don't drop one. So over here on the driver's side of the intake manifold, we do have a heat shield that is covering the high pressure fuel pump. So there's 2 12mm bolts holding that guy on. One is on the intake manifold and another one is connected to the head. We're going to go ahead and take off both those bolts so we can fully remove this heat shield and just get it out of our way. There are some hoses that are kind of in the way of things, but the hoses, you can either maneuver around them or just move them out of the way a little bit to get to the bolts that you need to get to. so the heat shield's now loose and free. We're not gonna pop it out quite yet. What we're gonna go ahead and do next is unclip. Let's see here, 1, 2, 3, basically 4. So you've got 2 of these clips that are very easy to unclip, flathead screwdriver, carefully so you don't break them because they're brittle. And then some either needle nose, or you could take the back of your ratchet or screwdriver and just pop these out. So there's one there, and then there's one connected here to that shield as well that's covering the high pressure fuel pump. So we'll go ahead and pop those now. So we got that alternator wiring harness disconnected, and then we removed that heat shield. So the intake manifold is loose right now. It's not free. Like I said, there's still some additional hoses and some wiring harnesses that we need to unplug. So now on driver's side, we've still got 2 more fuel lines here that we need to undo. The easiest way that I've found to get these disconnected is to go ahead and remove this bracket here. So we're going to remove the bracket, and then we can kind of, you know, wiggle this down a little bit and finesse our way in there to get these hoses that need to get disconnected. This bracket will not fit through the gap here in the intake manifold. Kind of annoying, but it is what it is. So it's just easier to remove this to disconnect those hoses. Just what I found to work best for me. Alright, so we went ahead and popped off one of the lines just by tugging it a little bit down low. So that's okay, no problem. However, we are going to want to pull this fuel line off completely. So it's just a fuel line here. There's no clamps on it whatsoever. And it connects to your fuel rail down low, and you'll see where it connects to. So we'll go ahead and put that side back on just so we don't lose that hose. And then we have another fuel line here with another one of those blue clips. So with this guy here, you spin that around. This is the fuel line here. And so it's a little different than the one that was up top. But with this guy, if you take needle nose and depress these 2 pins, or these 2 tabs that are on each side equally, and push up, you'll be able to go ahead and pop that clip up and be able to remove that fuel line. So let's go ahead and get that. And then there we go, we got that bracket off. And that fuel line is also now removed. So on this side, still on driver's side, we do have another coolant line underneath here. This one does have a clamp on it, so some long needle nose definitely help. Push that clamp back a bit. And then we can get back behind the intake manifold and give it a nice little twist to break it free if possible, and pull it right off. And then we've got a TGV already kind of starting to slide its way out. So I'm going to go ahead and carefully remove that guy just to get it out of the way and keep it from falling. Driver's side TGV, we go ahead and just pulled that out since it was already falling out. And we do still have a wiring connection to the throttle body. So this right here is going to be your throttle body wire, and it's going to plug in right next to it, right in front of it, right here. So when you're on passenger side, it's going to be easier to grab. The clip is facing driver's side, so you just got to depress that clip and give it a nice easy tug, not on the wires but on the plastic connection part, because you don't want to pull any wires out of it. That'd be very bad. Cool. Alright, so on passenger side, you saw where we disconnected the throttle body sensor from. So there's more wiring harnesses and plugs underneath the intake manifold. And for this, there's a 12mm bolt that's holding on a bracket that's holding all those plugs in place. And what I found is easiest is just to go ahead and pop that 12 millimeter bolt and go ahead and remove that bracket that's holding all of that wiring onto the intake manifold. And then we do still have another plastic clip that is holding the main wiring harness on to the intake manifold. So we're going to go ahead and kind of try to finesse and flip the intake manifold to pop that plastic pinch tab off. We just got to pinch it with some needle nose so we can pop it out cleanly and not break it. So we got that clip out that was attached to the main wiring harness to the intake manifold, and it was definitely a doozy, but you just got to finesse it as much as you can to get it out. The intake manifold is essentially all the way off now, but now that we have it flipped over, we can obviously see that we've got one more coolant line right here, and we are going to get in here with some needle nose, whether big or small, and get that clip moved down. And then once we get that clip moved down, we can go ahead and give this a nice little twist, maybe. And again, sometimes these hoses, when they've been in place for so long, you do have to use pliers to just kind of grip the hose, give it a nice little twist to break it loose. And then once you do that, we can go ahead and pull that down, and then she's off, and then we can lift the intake manifold completely off. So now that we got the intake manifold completely off, we have the lower TGVs exposed, and on this guy here, we're gonna have 3 bolts on each side. We've got one down here, one in the middle, and then one kind of under some foam over here, and we'll go ahead and remove these lower TGVs on both sides. So I went ahead and removed the piece of foam that is covering the high pressure fuel pump, and once you do that, I mean, that's just a piece in itself. So once you do that, you've got access, plenty of access to all 3 of the bolts on driver's side. And then on passenger side, there might be like a wiring harness that you kind of have to push out of the way. But once you do that, you'll be good to go there. So we're gonna grab our socket and extension, and I believe it's a 12 millimeter here as well. And we're gonna go ahead and pop loose all of these lower TGV bolts. And then there is our driver's side lower TGV. So we got that out, went ahead and pulled that out with all the bolts, and we'll keep those in place so we make sure they go back in the right spots. And now we've got our lower TGV out on the passenger side. One step closer, actually like 10 steps closer to finally being able to blast these valves. So on both sides of the motor, once you have the lower TGVs removed, you will have 4 plates that are in here as well. And these are going to be the plates. So pretty gross and dirty. They are all the same. So it doesn't matter if you mix them up, just when you put them back in, the tab does go down so it can mold to the contour of what's inside of the head. So these are the plates that are on the driver's side, and I've kind of already taken a peek down here at the valves. And how many miles did you say are on the car?
35,000.
So 35,000 miles on the car with an air oil separator, probably about 5,000 miles ago. So about at 30,000 miles he installed an air oil separator. Like I said earlier, he does still have an EGR, and you can definitely tell. So they are definitely some pretty dirty valves in here, and I will make sure to throw in some pictures of these valves before and after as well. So let's go ahead and pull the plates out on the other side. So So as you can see here, I've got my bore camera inside of the cylinder, and that is a pretty dirty valve, and this one's open right now, so we're going to get it closed. Obviously make sure each individual valve is closed before we start the blasting process, but we got a couple more things to do before we get there. Just more of a just closing some things off, putting some tape over for some cylinders, cleaning some stuff before we start just the blasting. But you can definitely see there's one valve, and then we can go over to the other side here, and you can get in there and see all of that caked up buildup that's in there. So definitely needs this service done, and so that's what we're here to do. So I am going to be putting some tape over passenger side, both of the valves, the openings for the valves, so because I'm going to start on the driver's side blasting them, and I don't want any debris or anything to get inside of them. But to get the tape to stick, we've got to make sure that we clean off the surface. So I sprayed some brake cleaner here on a rag, and there is some debris that's down in here, like some leaves and gunk, so we want to make sure that we don't let any of that stuff get inside of here. But just give the top of the heads a good wipe down cleaning, so we can get that blue tape to adhere and stick. So there we go, we've got those valves, the top of them cleaned up so the tape will adhere, and then we put that blue tape over it. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and start over on the driver's side valves. So we're going to move over to that side. We're going to get one of them taped up so we can install our blasting bracket onto the valve that we're going to do. However, before we do that, we are going to go ahead and make sure we close that valve off all the way. And then once we do that, we'll get that bracket on there and we can start our blasting process. Alright, so we've got our valves taped off that we're not going to be blasting. Over here on my phone, I've got a video of the valve on a bore camera, so I could really see to make sure that they are being closed. So what we're going to do is, it's fully open right now. As you can see, get that glare out of there. So it's fully open right now. So we're going to go ahead and put on this 2019? So on this 2019 WRX, the crank pulley is a 19 millimeter. And on my 2015 WRX, the crank pulley is a 22 millimeter. I'm talking about the crank pulley bolt. So kind of interesting there, but it is what it is. No big deal. But we got the right size, and you want to use a shallow. If you don't use a shallow, you are going to have to pull out the radiator fans to get your longer socket in there. More than likely, it looks like there's a lot of space in this one, so they must have made some subtle changes in between the 15 to the 19 besides body style stuff. But no big deal, we got what we need on here, so we're going to head and get these valves closed. And I'm going to crank this over twice, and whenever you crank it over, you want to make sure that you go clockwise with it. You don't want to crank the motor over counterclockwise, you'll mess some stuff up. So turn clockwise, and we're going to crank it over twice. I'm going to close the valves, I'm going to reopen the valve, and then I'm going to close it again. And then once it looks visually closed, I'm going to give it like another quarter to half turn to really make sure that it's closed, so we don't get any walnut shell in there. Now the whole point of using walnut shell is that if it's abrasive enough to remove the carbon buildup, but if any small increment was to get down into the cylinders, it's just going to burn off. Now obviously you want to make sure the valves are closed. You don't want a bunch of walnut in there, and you really don't want to try to get any in there. It's not the point of this, but in case it was to happen, the little bit of walnut that does get into the cylinder will go ahead and burn off. So let's go ahead and get this valve closed. So there, we're closed, but like I said, we're going to go ahead and do 2 solid rotations on this. And just take your time when you're doing this. There's no need to rush. You're working in a tight space. It's definitely a little bit of a knuckle buster. And there we go, we're opening it again. And then now we're going back to the closed position, so we'll keep an eye on it. Still not quite closed. So that I would consider closed right there. However, like I said, we're gonna go just another about a quarter rotation to a half rotation to make sure it's fully closed. And there we go. So that valve is completely closed. So we can go ahead and slap on our adapter for the blasting process and hook up our air compressor, get the Walnut media into our media blaster, and start blasting this guy. Alrighty, so we're ready to begin our blasting process. We got the valves closed, and then on top of that I did go ahead and lay a towel down on top of the block just to kind of help with cleanup process, and it also covers a lot of hoses and electrical connections. And then a few other hoses, like you can see the fuel lines that we put over here. I went ahead and taped those off as well, just so we can keep any walnut that might be blowing around, which not much will be blowing around because we'll have the vacuum running at the same time, which we already have connected. But just in case, you want to take precaution. So we are using the subiebros Fa20DIT walnut blasting valve adapter, and then also their wand kit. And I want to say that their kit's about roughly $100 or so, and I will go ahead and link that down low as well. Very awesome company to work with. DJ, if you ever see this video, thank you very much for responding to my emails when I was ready to purchase this kit and answering my questions that I had. So thanks subiebros for that. But anyways, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and begin with this walnut blasting and kick the vacuum on, and our air compressor's all hooked up already, so we're gonna start blasting this thing and clean it up.
Oh, we're just doing some advertising here in the neighborhood.
They are definitely looking a lot cleaner than they did before. And you know, you might still have a little bit of carbon buildup on the valve, on the seat of the valve, not the seat of the valve, the stem of the valve. But mainly what we're trying to do here is we're trying to clean up the valves themselves. So we could go a little bit longer in here. I probably will go just a little bit longer in this side. I might switch sides just to get a little bit of a different angle, but both sides of these valves are looking incredibly better to what they started out as. And again, like I said, it's not going to be perfect by any which way, shape, or form, but we're trying to clean those valves off as much as we possibly can, and that is sure looking a heck of a lot better than it did. Alright, so we got that first valve blasted, and as you can see, the before and after looks a ton better. So now all we've got to do is continue the process 3 more times. And what we're actually going to do is I'm going to change up the time frame that I'm blasting for a little bit here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 3 minutes per side of this bracket. and that way I can kind of concentrate more on each individual valve for about a good 3-minute time span, and trying to get the whole, instead of trying to get the whole thing in one go around. So might save me a little bit of time, might save me a little bit of walnut as well, but regardless, we're gonna get these things all cleaned up and we're gonna continue this process. So let's begin.
Perfect, 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 perfect.
Alrighty, well, we got the whole process done of walnut blasting the intake valves, and I'm sure you've seen pictures earlier in the video, and I'll throw some more pictures in here right now. They were pretty dirty, and that's at 35,000 miles, and they look a heck of a lot better now. So now that we've got the whole process done, we've cleaned a little some stuff up and whatnot, we're just gonna go ahead and reverse the process of removing the intake manifold. Off camera, I did already go ahead and clean up the map sensor that was on the intake manifold. It's just a 10mm bolt, and that map sensor just pops right out. You might have to pull it a little bit hard because there's an O-ring in there that seats it in place, or helps seat it in place and keep air from escaping and whatnot. But I just hit it with some map sensor cleaner, and then also went ahead and took the coupler off of the throttle body for his intercooler and gave it a nice solid wipe down with some brake cleaner. Got up, opened it up, got up in there and really wiped it down. Didn't look dirty visually, but once you opened it up and got a rag in there and really cleaned it up, you definitely saw some stuff that came up off on the rag. So yeah, everything's done as far as that goes. We just gotta start putting this guy back together, and we're gonna go ahead and begin that right now. So one other thing, again, earlier I mentioned the plates that are in each of the cylinders in the heads. So this is a dirty one, right there, if it'll focus and not on my face. Dirty plate, clean plate. So I went ahead and actually pre-blasted these plates. I've got another motor at home, so I pre-blasted these so they're already clean for him. And then I'll take these with me and pre-blast these at home as well, so they're ready for the next customer. And then I'll pull those out and blast those and just keep going down the line. But yeah, everything's gonna be nice and clean going back into his car, and this thing's gonna be running great for him. All right, now let's start reassembling this. Well, that's the process of walnut blasting direct injected intake valves on a 15 plus WRX with an Fa20DIT in it. As you can see here behind me, the car is running great. We are just burping the coolant system with the heater on full blast and making sure everything's working perfectly fine. We got no leaks, no misfires, no nothing. We're gonna go take the car for a little rip around the block just to make sure everything's functioning as it should be. And so far so good. So thank you guys very much for watching the video. Like I said before in the beginning, this is a service that I do offer. I'm located in Yakima, Washington, so Central Washington. I do need the car for at least a full day to be able to perform this service. So I do ask that if you want the service done, obviously reach out to me and we can discuss details and whatnot from there. So again, valves blasted on Ricky's car. I will link his Instagram right down below. It's BagBoyBlue, and I'll put all my info down there as well, along with the subiebros, a link to the subiebros walnut blasting kit also. So thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I really appreciate y'all. You guys have a good one.